we believe that personal growth is the cornerstone of professional success. So our platform features over 200 highly accredited coaches who provide guidance to help employees manage daily stressors, enhance their leadership skills, and navigate the complexities of workplace dynamics. Known for the Boon effect, our services have proven to significantly enhance employee retention, productivity, and overall company culture, making Boon an indispensable partner to over 100 small to mid-sized companies worldwide. Today, I'm super excited to facilitate a conversation that will not only enlighten us about the challenges of mental health in the workplace, but also explore transformative strategies with the help of our esteemed panelists, Metta Artest and Dr. Monica Worline. So for our first speaker, we have Metta Artest, an NBA champion whose career spans 19 years across teams like the Indiana Pacers, Los Angeles Lakers, and New York Knicks, among others. And I've been told by Metta that he's rooting for the Pacers. So Knicks fans, sorry about that. Beyond his achievements on the court, Metta is the pioneering voice in sports for mental health advocacy. After publicly sharing his own experiences with mental health challenges, he has dedicated much of his post-basketball life to promoting mental wellness, particularly in underserved communities. As I was reading his book, No Mallet, I saw he even donated a full year of his basketball salary to organizations supporting mental health advocacy across the country. Beyond basketball, Metta is an entrepreneur. So his efforts include founding our Test Management Group, our Test University, and becoming Chief Impact Director at Audify, a test platform aimed at improving mental health infrastructure. And joining him is Dr. Monica Worline. She's the faculty director of the Center for Positive Organizations at Michigan Ross School of Business, founder and CEO at Enliven Work, and research scientist at Stanford University. With over 2 decades of experience in the positive organizational scholarship community, Dr. Worline has focused her extensive research and teaching on how organizations can foster environments that elevate human dignity and well-being. She's the co-author of Awakening Compassion at Work and leads the Compassion Lab. Her pioneering work helps organizations integrate compassion into their practices to improve overall workplace culture. Today, we're going to explore the nuances of mental well-being in professional environments. We're going to discuss their unique personal challenges and strategies to overcome stigma and the role of leadership in fostering supportive cultures. So if you have any questions, the chat's open. I see it here. I see a bunch of things there. Feel free to put any questions in Q&A and I'll work them into the conversation based on the flow. But without further ado, Metta, would love to start with you. Love to hear a little bit more about your personal journey and a pivotal moment in your mental health journey that profoundly impacted your perspective or approach in life and work.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think, I think pivotal moments, I think it always, kind of always arise, but I think for the most part, you're in a mid-adult, 25, 27, you realize you're in your potential. You have a little ways to go in terms of reaching your potential, but sometimes you have those blockers. And so I think at that age, I was pretty much looking at ways to improve my stability by doing a lot of therapy, a lot of meditation, a lot of different breathing exercises, and just trying to become a whole, as you enter into your prime. I think that was the age where I really started to take it a little bit more serious.
Yeah. And so do you think, as you started to take it a little bit more seriously, how do you feel like it impacted your life moving forward and how you kind of viewed things both personally and professionally?
I think personally, being able to make better decisions under kind of a clear mind, I think that's how it really impacted me. And then also performing in life, performing, in sports, performing even for yourself in terms of what brings you substance, what brings you happiness, and finding it. Sometimes that's hard to find too. So I think having that clarity I was able to explore more about what things I like and things I didn't even know I liked, which made me kind of happy and kind of made me almost whole. So I think that was like the power of kind of going down that journey.
Love that. I guess like a follow-up question to that, having been both a professional athlete and now a business leader and impacting and your communities in a philanthropic state. I would love to see. I know you were like one of the pioneers around mental health, but like, how have you seen it evolve both within the NBA, but then also as you're focused more on philanthropy and being an entrepreneur? How has it evolved in these some of these high pressure environments?
Yeah, I think it evolved when you look at when I got into the NBA in 1999. So that's when I first hit the big public scene on being on television. It wasn't really accepted in a way where it was normal for people to feel, a certain way. You had to be tough as a man, as an athlete. Just depending on your class or what you were doing, you were taught to just tough it out, trade things out, um, but never really address issues. So you see at some point in time where adults, you get older and you just traumatized or different things like that. And it's hard to get past. So as I discovered, it's okay to feel any which way, and nobody's perfect. When I got about the age of 27, 28, I just decided to start talking about it. And I know sometimes you get a little backlash. It was more to just critics, non-media critics, all type of critics, just like, what are you doing talking about your issues or your problems? And, you become a little weak. But it actually, as I was hearing all this stuff, I kind of was able to block things out. I actually became more stronger mentally, more secure, happy. But it's good to see the organizations, the corporations, that everybody has these mental health programs, and since 2011 or 2010 when I won the title and thank my psychiatrist on national television, I think that opened up a lot of minds. And it's actually really cool to be able to, because that fire it still feel like it's lit. It's actually thriving. The whole space is thriving. People want to receive help. Corporations, organizations getting involved. But we still got a long way to go. But it was a good kind of igniter.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, I mean, you've done so much work in the space, help create, momentum and getting to a place where people can get support. And I think it's like a really awesome segue because Monica, you've also spent so much of your career and your research. And I think something that's like really unique about your perspective is that you view compassion as one of the main drivers for employee engagement, productivity, and overall well-being in the workplace. So I would love to hear some of your research, like how it dovetails into this narrative of supporting employee through compassion as a great way to foster amazing cultures that support well-being in the workplace.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for the invitation. And Metta, thanks for sharing the stage today. It's an honor to be with you.
Same here.
I think you have changed so many lives by being willing to tell your story and not bowing to the pressure. And I think that is something that we learn from using the word compassion, which to most people sounds a bit too soft and fuzzy and weak. It's probably not a word that would have been in the world you were coming from when you were deciding to tell a story about who you are and how you are. But what we know from the world's wisdom traditions and a long philosophy and theology of compassion is that that's a misunderstanding of the word, that in fact being able to share that we're suffering and to be with others who are suffering in a way that alleviates that suffering is one of the biggest forms of courage, right? The courage to speak up, to share authentically about our experience. Also the courage to stand by someone, to suffer with someone, which is literally the Latin root of the word compassio, is to suffer with. And when we walk the trail of compassion, we're literally willing to suffer with those who are suffering in order to find ways to alleviate and address the circumstances and change the circumstances that are causing so much suffering. And I think the work that you have done, the organizations you've supported, the financial resources that you have given, and also lending your voice and your credibility and your presence to this activism in the world. Like, those are all forms of compassion in action. And our research shows that when people and organizations take this up and take seriously the opportunity to be with others who are in pain or who are in distress and try to alleviate that distress, that things like you said, Chris, like employee engagement goes up. People like to be part of organizations where they feel cared for. It makes intuitive sense. But when we feel that someone cares for us, it feels safer to be there doing whatever we're supposed to do. So one of the big variables that people measure now is called psychological safety at work, right? That it's easier to take the risk of admitting that something's wrong and that you need some help, or to reach out to others who might look like they need help instead of holding back and staying quiet. That's what psychological safety does for workplaces. And it helps people's mental health. It also helps people be more creative and drive more innovative outcomes. It builds better entrepreneurial ventures and more creative companies. So we see things like service quality, resilience, and adaptability to change also increase when, as researchers, we come and try to measure what's the effect of the beauty and power of people sharing stories like this and rising to the occasion to really help address the suffering that's present in our organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does so much for our communities, and being able to really have someone that you can look up to say that, hey, sometimes it's not always incredible, and with whether it's in the workplace or outside of it, anyone can get support through a multitude of ways, and just being able to share how you get that support, I think, is really important, and where you're coming from. So, like, dovetailing into that, Meta, would love to hear, based on support, as you're thinking about from others, whether it's within your community, within the MBA, like, what made a significant difference in your mental health during your athletic career, and how did it really start with that support that you were able to get?
Yeah, I think the support came from, the teams that I've played on, and just being open to you kind of speaking to me, and not really feeling like, oh, Meta might not want to take a therapy session, and they wasn't really worried about how I would feel. They really was worried about just helping me improve. So supporting me with my therapist. I did have multiple therapists at one point in time. And then the third, I went through a few therapists, but then just them also encouraging me to practice on different modalities, like definitely breathing. The breathing was the big one for me, because I was able to control my breath and take a beat. Somebody with me, I have a lot of passion and a lot of different things on my mind, so I really can't sit still in terms of how the creativity part. So I needed to find what my aspirations were, and different things, and my talents and other interests. So my therapist, they was first, phase one was to help me find that clarity. And then phase two was to find different things that I was interested in. And I was starting to get support, on wanting to go back to school. When I started to get support there, I was like, all right, cool. Everybody understands kind of what I want to do. It's not only about basketball. And then I became more comfortable kind of in my own skin. I became more comfortable kind of trying to pursuing being academic. And then I also became more secure, where I didn't have to go out. I didn't have to drink. I didn't have to do those things and fit in with different crowds. So and that all was a part of the journey. It was all a part of my exercise, my meditation, my therapy, and then evolving. Just evolving as a person and looking at the opportunities that is placed in front. It was really hard to do that when I was younger. You know, um, just because you're not able to really process not necessarily right from wrong, but it's a reaction from non-reaction. Why am I reacting to literally everything? And why do I think it's the end of the world? Why do I think every time something bad happens, it's the end of the world? So just having that support, my therapist, are getting down to the real issues, not necessarily placing a band-aid over, problems, but really healing. That was the big thing. And then you run across a lot of therapists. I was doing marriage counseling at one point, and I think the marriage counseling actually taught me more than my anger management classes I was doing. It was just different teachings. So you take a little bit from both, or from all of them, and you start to apply it. And I remember my last mandated session that I had when I was about 28, 29. I just continued with the therapist. So I told the therapist, let's continue our sessions. And then we started to just go into different forms of meditation and different forms of therapy, sports therapy, which came. And then it started to get fun. Because once you get past the big problems, I think continued therapy, because now you can open doors that you never thought you had access to. And that all comes from support to help somebody. Somebody has to help guide you on this journey.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. It sounds like having the organizational support, at least as a starting point, given some of the experiences you had in your life, like really helped push you along the journey. And I'm seeing so many things in the chat from people thanking you for expressing yourself. And something that's really interesting from the chat that I'm seeing is that people are saying a lot of their mental well-being challenges or mental health challenges are actually coming from the interactions that they're having with employers and with colleagues that they work with, and creating a space that is unhealthy for them. So I'd love to hear, Monica, from your perspective. I know you've spent a lot of time on corporate architecture and architecting well-being. I would love to hear like a case study or example where you've seen that implementing social architecture effectively, how it improves organizational well-being. And if you have any specific case studies, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'll talk about some examples and give some categories of thinking that may be helpful. But as I was listening to Metta, I was thinking about, one of the categories of things that we research that really matters to how people feel about their work and whether they feel that they can be whole people and get meaning out of their work is the role that they're in and the way that they craft that role for themselves. And I could have been mishearing you, Metta, and correct me if I was, but one of the things I heard you say was that in your journey, you were seeking a space to be more of your creative self, that you're not just basketball, right? That you had a lot of passions and interests and a very curious person. And for many people, they are in roles that may not allow them to express parts of who they are, or that may not accommodate being the kind of person they want to be at work. And we are given roles by society, right? And we are given roles by organizations. So we do have to learn something about those roles. That's how roles work in social life. But the other thing that's true about a role and that helps us with mental health and compassion and well-being is that we can shape that role and use our creativity and our human agency to make the role more of what we want it to be. Right? So the way Metta changed basketball player as a role into spokesperson for mental health and well-being and into entrepreneur and visionary, right? Any of us in any role, my role as professor, I can craft that role to be someone who cares about my students so much that I want to support their growth and their well-being and their becoming full human beings. And for other people who are sharing in the chat that as part of their role, they feel like they're getting sicker and they're getting smaller. What our research would encourage is for you to look for employers and roles where you can grow and you can craft your way into being compassionate no matter what your job is. So we have studied organizations in the case study example that you asked for, Chris, where people, whatever their job was, from receptionist to attorney to CEO to environmental steward, right? Everybody was asked, whatever your other job responsibilities are, make compassion your primary responsibility. And you can be a receptionist with compassion. You can be an attorney with compassion. You can be a basketball player with compassion. You can be a CEO with compassion. And when people think that part of their work responsibility is to alleviate the suffering of themselves and other people, that's where we go to changing those work outcomes that I talked about before. So roles is just one category. We try to study other categories too, including work routines and how things get done, the networks that we create and how we create groups and subgroups that support us, and the culture that we build in organizations, of course. But thinking about just how you as an individual can craft your role and how you want to show up in that role in ways that support your own and others' mental health. I think, our cases illustrate the efficacy. It's something that every person can do. You don't have to wait for the organization around you to change.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think something that you mentioned just that is you don't have to wait for organizations to change. Something I just saw in the chat is I wish more companies would create a safe workplace for people to talk about their mental health and make more tools and resources more accessible. And I agree. And that a lot of our customers come to Boon because they are trying to find a way to create more safe workplaces through personalized one-on-one coaching and really support employees at this intersection of personal growth and professional development. So I feel like things are trending in the right direction, but a lot of times it doesn't necessarily always start with the company doing it. It's how do you start to raise how some of these issues or challenges are impacted your organization more broadly and finding the right resources to pull in. And similarly, one of the Q&A questions we just got was directed towards Metta. And Metta, would love to hear if you believe topics such as personal development, meditation, spirituality, and topics that were considered like once woo-woo are becoming more mainstream. And if not, when do you see that emerging into the mainstream? I think you're on mute, Metta.
Sorry. What was the first part of the question?
Do you believe topics such as personal development, meditation, and spirituality, topics that were like once considered woo-woo, are becoming more mainstream?
Yeah, I definitely believe in that. I think, people just wasn't taking the time to explore meditation, understanding your body. I know even now chakras is a thing. I started to get into different modalities and just looking at Buddhism, looking at meditation, looking at therapy, looking at how astrology affects the kind of our past and our future, and just like looking at everything, things I didn't know about the body and things I didn't know about the world and emotions. So I try to take it all, and even working with singing bowls. I love singing bowls. I didn't have one in a couple of years, but when I did have one, it was an amazing tool to just align yourself with the world and with the environment. Definitely the breathing, identifying where tension is at in your your forehead or your shoulders or your jaws or your hips, and just identifying the tension there, and being able to release and just doing things. I was like, oh wow, this is empowering. I didn't even realize my shoulders was tense. Sometimes you don't even realize, that you're holding all this tension. And so I think on top of kind of traditional, medicine or traditional practices, I think the old school kind of practices, kind of almost unconventional practices. I think, if it works for you, then keep pursuing it. I don't think there's a reason to not attempt, because sometimes it's hard to find something that works. Because this is not a one shoe fits all. Um, Everybody's going through their own thing, custom to them, right? So you got to have a custom kind of practice.
Yeah, I totally agree. Love that. And we got another question directed towards Monica. Would love to hear what factors can affect psychological safety. Metta just talked about some of the ways that he's integrated practices into his life to support himself. But as you're thinking about like organizationally, what factors affect psychological safety?
Well, let me say that for people who are really curious about this idea, the person who has studied this the most is Amy Edmondson at Harvard, and she has a new book out called The Right Kind of Wrong. And the reason it's called that is because one of the biggest things that affects people's sense that a place is safe to speak up and to be more of ourselves is what happens when somebody makes a mistake. So we learn a lot about so psychological safety technically is defined as the sense that a group is safe for small interpersonal risk taking. And that's how researchers define that term. And we learn about that by watching what happens when other people take small risks. If people tell a story and get shot down, if they reveal something about themselves and then they get uninvited to lunch, if people, I see in the chat that people are experiencing bullying and nobody is being an ally, no one's stepping up, no one's coming to that person's aid. That's going to teach us that the environment isn't safe. And there's also questions in the chat about the role of manager or supervisor. And manager and supervisor are super focal roles, right? In organizations, we're looking to those people to show us what's acceptable around here, what's considered good, what's considered okay. And so even if you're not technically an HR professional or an HR practitioner, you don't have to be a therapist. You're not going to become a psychiatrist, but you do have a responsibility to model care and compassion for the people around you. When someone makes a mistake, to say, you know what, let's all gather around and figure out what happened here and what we can learn from it. When someone speaks up about something tender, to thank someone for being disclosing and to encourage other people to hold that with care and share more about what's going on for them, right? Those are managerial moves that help build psychological safety and that make it okay for other people to come to one another's aid. So it's not all the manager's job, of course, but one of the biggest things that tells us whether a workplace is compassionate and safe is the modeling that we see other people doing, especially when something difficult is happening.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like we got a really good question in the chat that dovetails perfectly with this that I would love to ask. And Metta, this one is directed towards you. I think what Monica was just talking about is really built on courage. So being able to build up the courage to do what's right and find a way to do what's right. And this question came from similar thought process, which was someone presumed or might presume back then your agents and managers maybe asked you not to talk about these things. I don't know if that was the case, but like where, when you won the championship, you thanked your therapist or your psychiatrist live. Like, where did you? Would love to hear you speak a little bit about like the beginning stages of what it took for you to start talking about your mental health journey and build up the courage to do it. And what do you recommend for those that are thinking about going against the norm, standing up for someone's mental health that they see getting bullied in the workplace, or that are really struggling with it more broadly?
Yeah, when I won the championship, and then I think my psychologist, on national television, I thought it was very important. It was a big stage, and it was an opportunity to really send out a really good message and use my platform for empowerment, use my platform to bring people together. I obviously with all the media, it often tries to prove that we're separate, and it's just a lot of chaos. And I just thought that was a perfect stage, and I didn't realize it would have the effect that it had. I knew people would talk about it, but I didn't know they would still be talking about it to this day. This is 15 years later. And that's super exciting because I've been doing so much social impact. Now sometimes I get a chance to take a break because the work is just still, a lot of work from that moment is still taking place. I think in 2007, I wanted to do mental health programming. I was trying to get it done. I was in Sacramento at the time, but I didn't necessarily have a team or even people that understood that this could help. We're not just trying to entertain, So at that point, I was starting to think about just talking about this more openly. I was doing a lot of people already was inviting me to different, I guess, panels or events where they would discussing mental health, and so I was already going down that path. And at that point, it was really it wasn't cool. People looked at it like it was just kind of crazy, or people looked at it as the weird, you know, um, and just like some type of change that I made in my life where I was like going through difficult times. But for me, it was just people need help, you know. So um, I had to block a lot of people out mentally, because people wanted to see some other version of me. Now I'm getting older, and no matter what I've been through and how I grew up, the constant has been helping people, and been bringing people together. And it even showed in my name. A year later, I changed my name to Metta World Peace, which is another big statement, and people they didn't know how to deal with that one either. They're just like, oh wow, this guy's crazy, and like, oh, it's not crazy when you're trying to push world peace, and that's the society that we all live in individually. And we all go through our own things individually, but certain things just don't make sense, to me, especially if you're promoting world peace, and people that think that's like, weird. You got to feel weird that you're promoting world peace, or you're just telling people it's okay to seek therapy. But that's where you become stronger. That's where you just block it all out once again. And now you look at what's happening, in sports, is like job well done. The owners are more inclined to give the resources, and even some of the executives need the therapy. A lot of the executives,
Yeah.
They're probably happy too, quietly, because everybody's going through things, and families, families breaking up, which is also another issue that we got to address, at some point. So now you're talking about backing into family therapy, and making that cool. There's so many different forms of therapy that's not highlighted yet. Right now, it's general, a lot of people is trying to take advantage of the opportunity because the insurance, and you can get, it's a lucrative market. Let's just be honest, it's a lucrative space. So sometimes the messaging is getting lost because it's things that's in the front that's not authentic. So, but we got to keep it going. We bring therapy, we bring to the front that seeking therapies. Okay, what's the next one? Okay, maybe now let's start marketing family therapy. Okay, then what's the next one? Make them keep up with us.
Can I jump in there, Chris, and
Yeah,
build
feel free.
on Metta? Here's your next venture idea for you, maybe. But there's, in the spirit of kind of keeping using the technology to keep building on what you can see for the world, there's a use of artificial intelligence now that's being studied where you use a virtual reality headset to have an interaction with someone who's in distress, someone who's going through a mental health challenge, and you get to practice being compassionate to that person in the virtual world. And then the AI changes the setting for you, and you become the person in distress in the virtual world. And your words that you just gave to the avatar now come back to you. And people have a very profound experience of hearing their own voice saying something compassionate to themselves in this virtual reality. And it highlights how often we talk to ourselves in ways that are harsh, right? We internalize voices from our family structures that might be harsh or critical. We haven't all, had backgrounds that have taught us to relate to ourselves in that kind of a way. And so having the technology actually support the expression of this kind of love and peace and compassion has these really profound psychological effects. And it's one of the ways that we could use technology tools for good, right, rather than for dividing people.
100%. And I think there is a huge opportunity there. I think also something that I saw, and this is dovetails into a question that we got in the chat, is Metta. I saw you were for Mental Health Awareness Month recently at a school for younger children, promoting mental health at an earlier age. And I think two-pronged questions, but what age do you think that mental well-being resources should be made available for youth? And how do you feel like this would have changed your life if this was something that was destigmatized back then and could have impacted you a little bit earlier in your life?
Yeah, I actually started when I was 13. There was a social worker program in my neighborhood, and I remember that class, and it actually worked out. I think getting involved early, being that social media is so available, and it's just so much more things to be insecure about, so many more things to be depressed about. Especially social media, you're looking at these different lifestyles. They're really in your face. And then work, the workplace, or I need a job. Just you used to be able to get out of college and then kind of work your way to a job and not have the stress and the pressure. What was the first part of your question? I was actually going on a tangent.
First part of my question is like, how do you think starting earlier on bringing resources to youth for mental well-being, like what will the impact be, and how early should someone start?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think, so, with that being said, I think if a child, I think, the earlier, the better, but I think just not diagnosing this generally, I think everybody has a custom, problem or issue. I don't think just one thing can fix it. I don't think just one pill can fix it or just one style. That's why I think we should explore more. The family therapy is really big, teaching the parents how to cope with them being frustrated or them being depressed. How do you not deflect it on your family or your household to the point where you're losing your kids and losing your significant other. So I think things like that is important. And I also think breathing should be taught early, just to get, you're young, you don't necessarily know how to deal with emotion. So you can get tools, that I think that'll solve a lot. So I don't know if it needs to be heavy therapy, but you could do preventional stuff, and I think it should be implemented. I think they should spend extra money on it, and um, I think we have enough to add these different resources. It's proven with all the funding that we spend in other areas. I think add into education. The teachers should be paid more. I think all public service people should have to go through some type of social worker with firemen, police, security, anybody in public service, because as we know, look at all the families that are separate. So we know essentially we are the parents, because it does take a village. So if you got kids growing up without parents, if we're saying, we have no responsibility, then we're saying we don't care about that child. So I think if you had to do a poll, I think 70-80% of the people would want to do what they can for a child, right? So starting early, and investing in the youth, investing in people's mental health, investing in education, paying the teachers more, even all public service people, just pay them a little more, and then require everyone in public service to take these classes. So you come in contact with someone that needs to talk. At least you have some type of tools, and then at that that way I think that solves how young should someone start. Well, the whole time the system is set up to nurture the children, to nurture the kids, and nurture their emotions, because we just don't know what they're going through.
Definitely. And I feel like there is so much opportunity. Like you brought up so many good points there, Metta, just where we can be doing more. And something, a question that we just got in the chat, and something that I was thinking about as well from the community side, but also from like the corporate side, where we're a lot of small business owners are here in this call today. Like Monica, would love to hear what are things that organizations can do to bring more compassion and mental well-being to the forefront of their organizations, and what are some of the common mistakes that they also make when they're trying to foster a compassionate work environment?
Well, I think one mistake, Chris, that you know well, is that organizations may adopt what's traditionally called an employee assistance program, and that gives some resources to employees outside of their work environment if they need help. And those are good things. We don't want to discourage those. But the mistake part is that organizations adopt an EAP program of some kind, and then they check the box and say, okay, we're done. We did our mental health initiative. And what Metta is saying, right, like these are techniques for being human beings, living in the complex times that we live in. We need all kinds of continued learning and development and growth. So one thing organizations can do is have formalized learning programs where people learn things like mindfulness, meditation, breathing, movement techniques that are about calming and managing your emotions. There's a lot of emotional awareness techniques that can be learned. And if you can't afford to do a formal program, you can do informal brown bag conversations. You can take turns bringing resources in that you know about and teaching each other. And people that are running small businesses can make space for these kinds of conversations. They can make affinity groups or allegiance groups where people who want to have conversations about mental health and mental well-being can come together regularly as a part of the work environment, and they can know who else is interested and they can support each other. That's another way that you can change a small work environment without a ton of financial investment, but just by giving people time and space to see each other and talk with each other. So I think that paying attention to the variety of techniques out there, thinking of this as a part of how we learn how to be good human beings and how to be good employees, and that's a long-term journey that we're all on, is a really important way that organizations of any size can approach this issue.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's, I'm seeing some comments in the chat about return to work, how that has implicated and manifested in more challenges for people that are going through some fundamental challenges more broadly. And so creating a safe space is extremely important. And sorry, go ahead.
Well, just creating more freedom for people to, like, as Metta says, that it's all custom, right? Like, we can't adopt any one size fits all situation because we human beings are complex and we have different needs at different times. So organizations can usually worry less about control and more about creating space, right? Most organizations worry a lot about controlling people. But if what you could relax into is that feeling cared for and supported actually brings out, right, higher quality work. So higher quality work and higher levels of well-being at work go hand in hand with each other. And that's something that sometimes can put people who are worried about control in workplaces a bit more at ease. And then I just wanted to make sure before the chat passes us by too far to acknowledge the people who were sharing in the chat that they were being bullied at work or that they were experiencing a form of discrimination. It's not okay, right? And to share that in this space where we're talking about mental well-being and compassion, I don't think we should let it go unnoticed. Because one of the biggest things that kills the alleviation of suffering in workplaces is when we don't notice that other people aren't okay. Or we notice, but we're not brave enough to say anything or to call it out or to come to that person's aid. So I just wanted to wish well the people that were sharing that in the chat and also encourage you to find spaces where you're treated with respect and love and care, and to find spaces in yourself where you're treated that way too.
I love that. And I could not agree more. Yeah, I could not agree more. Sometimes speaking up is the first part of getting to a place that you feel better about your surroundings, you feel more supported, and really appreciate everyone's vulnerability here to share their stories and perspectives. So thank you very much. We have one final question that I see in the chat. I think Metta's name change represented much of his values and worldview. What was the process that led up to this very public change, and what did it represent in your own words, Metta?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, answer that question. I think I was just trying to evolve. I'm in the world of sports media, and I'm also in my own world of social impact, entrepreneurship, and going on a journey in social impact and entrepreneurship. So also going on the journey of, I was, a retirement was approaching. A new phase of my life was approaching, and I wanted to go into that phase happy and comfortable. And I think when I changed my name, I was going through some type of epiphany where I felt like there needed to be some type of voice where you can bring people together, but you don't really have to confine to anyone teaching. And I was going through my own spiritual journey. So I was doing a lot of research at one point, just researching the world and history. And I just started to really get in tune with myself. And Metta is a Buddhist name, so it came from the Buddhist culture, especially after I started doing my therapy. After my mandated sessions, I started to just stay with it. And the breathing is something that I really, started to like. And like I said, singing bowls came into play. learning about the chakras came into play, learning about emotional control. And then, so initially I was going to also have two Indian names. One was going to be Indian last name, but um, I was like, wow, that's too Indian. I was like, I said, first name could be Indian. I said, the last name has to be something else. So as I didn't want to have like two Indian names, um, then I said, wow, world peace. It really came right to me right away. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Right. Then I said, well, how is it going to play with it going on the back of my jersey? And I remember the first day I checked into a game, we was playing against the Clippers at home. And I remember checking in. I was like, oh man, why did I change my name? I felt kind of embarrassed, a little bit insecure with something like world peace on the back of my jersey. A little bit, I felt weird. But, once I checked into the game, it was just, get to work. You know what you know what you're doing, and go out there and perform. And then start the process. And because I love giving back so much, I felt like that was a way where I can always give back without having to kind of work smarter, not harder. And also I wasn't getting like a lot of the funding that I wanted, like for my foundation. I was getting known for philanthropy, but I wasn't necessarily getting the support. So I said, I'm just gonna do a big, kind of a big charitable cause or a big kind of social impact cause, and that was the name change. And I think to this day, people are so curious about it. People was always asking questions about it, and then maybe they say, "Oh, that's interesting. Maybe I could do something too to add value, to society, to the future." That's kind of what it was about. And then also staying centered. And the more you can stay centered, the more you're going to really perfect your journey. You're going to go through ups, you're going to go through downs, but it's going to be a journey. It's not going to be you reacting to your emotion, and now you're going on that specific emotions journey. So now you're going on a totally different journey, than the one you're supposed to go on. And you can only do that when you have control and you understand your reality. The reality is you will have good days, you will have bad days, you will have negative days, you'll have positive days, you're gonna have, it's always gonna be challenges. And if we know that we're gonna get through that because we're staying true to who we are, that's a recipe for success, a recipe for happiness, and you just, whether it's going on the beach or whether it's, hanging around trees or whether it's talking to family, you find something of substance. I think you find something of substance, because work is not it. Just working is not it. Obviously, people work so hard, they exit companies and it's still stress, right? So I wanted to make sure that I was happy first. That's kind of where the name came from.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you sharing that. And someone in the chat says thank you for going with your instinct and staying with it. So definitely have affected a lot of change. And I'd say likewise, a lot of the people in the chat, right? It's talking about some of your personal circumstances of what you're going through. I hope have been able to create a safe space for everyone today. Shameless plug, but Boon, we help a lot of companies support individuals both personally and professionally through our one-on-one coaching platform. And we'd love to be a resource here. So feel free to check out our website. We'll send around this recording to everyone that joined or registered today. So really appreciate your time again today. And Monica, Metta, anything that you want to say as your parting words to this group that have been with us here this Thursday?
I'd like to say gratitude to you again, Chris and Boon, for the invitation, and to Metta for sitting beside me on this virtual Zoom screen. It's an honor to be in your presence, and I find your story so inspiring. Thank you for telling it and for keeping the journey going over all these years. And I just encourage all of us to, sometimes it's just a little gentle question when we really mean it, like, how are you today? When we really listen deeply to the answer for the people around us, it can open up a portal into changing our lives, like Metta describes.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Nice words, Monica. And it was great to share this Zoom with you. And thank you, Chris and Boon. I thought it was a great event, a great online event. Hopefully everybody's inspired and, just stay connected to the community. Definitely thanks for having me. And I also wanted to plug Artest University is my foundation, my 501c3. We're doing some really cool stuff as we search to get our accreditation. So that's really cool. Some more cool stuff that we're doing. But also, yeah, just once again, thanks for having me, Chris. Thanks for having me, Boon and Monica. It was great being with you.
Yeah, thank you both. I really appreciate your time. You had some amazing and valuable insights and contributions today. So can definitely see the vulnerability, sharing more about how compassion and understanding and reaching out for resources are super important in creating environments where everyone can thrive. So let's keep pushing at the boundaries of where we are today in mental health and well-being in our workplaces. And we definitely have a long way to go across our entire community. So today is a really good start. Appreciate both your time and hope you all have a great rest of your day and rest of your weekend. Yeah, thanks again.